Shereen, good to have you on set.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Good to have you. You grew up in Augustown and Standpipe, Olympic Way. Now you own your own pharmacy near to Augustown. You're in Papine.
Right there in the middle of Papine, good little pharmacy.
Papine, now, you battled so many things in early life. Poverty, neglect by father. You're a part of a church, a very small church, and your father was...
My father was an evangelist in the church at the time. My mother, young church sister, typical situation where an unfortunate one, but fortunate in terms of I'm here, I'm alive, and it should have been a secret relationship that ended up manifesting in a pregnancy. And I think, you know, growing up in the church is a married evangelist. Yes, he was married.
An adult, yes. You know, married evangelist.
Exactly.
Nice young church sister.
All the elements of the most disgraceful situation that you can
carrying on an affair.
And I think at the time he was separated from his wife. And she got pregnant, and from what I remember my mom saying, he actually said that, you know, let's do away with this child.
Yes,
and
embarrassment.
It was embarrassing. He was ashamed, and I understand it now. Even as an adult, now you look back and you say, these circumstances, you're frustrated, you're cornered, you don't want the public embarrassment for your private sin. And so he saw that as the way out.
So he was pressing her to have the abortion.
I was speaking to her, and she actually said to me that he gave her some money to do it, and she
actually got the money.
And she went and bought some chicken with it. She bought some chicken, and you know, she was experiencing a hard time because I was the second child in 3 years, so she was just 20.
And so her first child was at 17?
Her first child was at 17. And she was in the church at that time? She was in the church, and then she
second disfellowship meant for her?
Exactly, backbench. I don't know if you know about that situation. I know about the church system. You're removed from all activities. Yes. You sit at the back. You experience all the embarrassment. Her mother was also in the right, whoa. And so it was difficult for her. But she, you know, one thing that inspired me, she told me that she prayed, and you know, she said, God, this is a child that nobody wants, but let this child be special. Yes. And I remember as a teenager when she told me that inspired me, because if that prayer was to make me special in spite of that hard circumstances, then somehow I needed to prove that, you know, there was something in me why I was brought into that unusual circumstance. Because one of the things is sometimes we focus on the sin of fornication and not looking at the fact that the child that is conceived is not a sin or anything. It is the fornication is a sin.
Of course,
and so you repent of the fornication, but the child should be loved, the child should be taken care of. And she made that tough decision in spite of the circumstance.
Yes. And were there others in the church who knew that it was the evangelist?
Yes, it was well known, but it was whispered. It was in hush.
Yeah, you know,
right, so for the first 10 to 12 years of my life, she left the church. My mother eventually left that church. But I had to still interact on different occasions. And I remember...
So were you told from before 12 who your father was?
I was told, but...
did your mother tell you?
I think it was my mother, but I was also told, do not call him daddy. Father. Yes, I couldn't call him my father. I couldn't publicly say daddy. I had to just distance myself. I would see my brother, and I couldn't relate to my brother because my brother, you know, does not know that he had a sister. So I had siblings who didn't know publicly that I was their child. I had cousins, aunts who just did not know that that I was his child. So for about 12 years of my life, it was a difficult thing. I remember on the day I got baptized, the church, it wasn't in that church, but it was in another church by Pastor Sewell, Selvin Sewell.
Yes.
And an evangelist came over to me and said, Dawkins, are you related to Evangelist Dawkins?
So you had his name?
Yes, because my mother gave me the name.
Mother gave you the name?
Yes.
Oh.
And when he asked me the question, I remember the shame because at that moment I didn't know what to answer because I was now a Christian baptized at 12. And I said, No, and then I walked away, and that was my first moment of my first sin after baptism.
Was your father?
Yes, and Pastor Sewell actually confronted him and said, you know, you needed to stop.
Confronted the evangelist.
He confronted my father. And he, at that time, decided, he made the decision that he was now going to publicly acknowledge me. And so he started introducing me to his wife and my brothers and sister. Yes. And over time, I was accepted as part of the family.
So before that, was he relating to you privately as your father?
Occasionally, he visited the home on occasion, but we didn't have a father-daughter relationship because he was just occasionally. We're talking about probably once or twice a year.
And he wasn't supporting you financially?
And no financial support.
So your mother was supporting you on what kind of salary? She was a domestic helper?
She was a domestic helper. I used to follow her at times when she went to wash people's clothes. Yes. So that was what I grew up seeing. And that is one of the reasons I have great respect for persons who do that job. I see it as part of, I see it as its own profession, you know. I don't look down on domestic helpers because I watched her go through that process. And it is while she was there as a domestic helper that many of the times from employers of hers, I would get clothes sometimes, you know, they would pass on stuff to me.
So you had to wear the hand-me-down clothes?
Yes. That's what I did for her a long time. That was what she tried her best, but one thing I credit her for is that education and food was a must in my home. She ended up having 5 of us in all, 4 boys, 1 girl.
5 children? 4
boys, 1 girl. And all of us had to, even when we were sick, we had to go to school. There was no excuse about it. You had to go to school. And this is somebody who actually I had to stop school from, she was about 13 thereabouts. She stopped going to school. She didn't go past primary, I believe, but she insisted that all of us had to go to school. There was no idling. We had to do homework. Even though she couldn't assist us with homework, we had to do it. If there was any extra lessons, anything, she would somehow find the money, but we had to be there. And the other aspect is food.
You got food.
She would always ensure we have something to eat. I remember one time watching her empty a tin of coins that she was accumulating over time because she was out of a job. And so she emptied that to find money in order to provide meals. And that was one of the things that inspired me, because when I saw how much she struggled, but there was a certain pride about her too, in spite of the struggles. She was always very proud of who she was, you know, and she was always saying, you know, you guys can do better and make sure you do better, and she's always encouraging us. So that pushed me to want to aspire to have more and do more.
And you felt you could do well and began reading. You were reading widely?
My mom said that I've been reading from basic school, and one of the things that surprised her is that I read every and anything. And so I would visit persons' homes and see a book, and I would take it up. Once there are words, I am reading it. It was an escape of sorts, because being an only girl and surrounded by boys, I didn't have a lot of persons to play with. And my mother had this thing, don't go to people's yard. I don't know if it's something that parents still do, but don't love people's yard, don't go to people's yard. So I had to stay in. So when I do visit, when I'm talking about visiting in terms of her places of employment or friends' houses of hers, then I would borrow the books and I would read. That was my escape.
Good. Shereen Dawkins is the first female president of the Jamaica Association of Pharmacy Owners. She herself, of course, is a pharmacy owner. She owns Goodwill Pharmacy in Papine. She has a master's degree in health law and ethics, an unusual degree here. Has had quite a journey. She tells us about that on Profile. We take our first break.